You know, when we think about preserving history, we usually picture this very specific thing, like an archivist in white gloves.
Right, yeah. Carefully placing some crumbling, fragile document into a sterile glass case.
Exactly, a climate-controlled vacuum. And the priority is preservation, right? Just locking the artifact away so it doesn't decay.
Which works for paper, but it doesn't work for everything.
No, it really doesn't, because there's a fundamental problem with that approach when it comes to human culture. When you seal a story in a vacuum, I mean, you might preserve the words perfectly, but you basically suffocate the breath out of it.
You lose the context.
Yeah, the rhythm, the humor, the cultural heartbeat, all of that just dies the moment it becomes the static museum piece.
It's so true.
I mean, imagine trying to understand why a 500-year-old joke was actually funny just by reading, like, a literal translation of the words on a page.
Oh, it's impossible.
Right. Without the timing or the wink or the shared cultural context, the punchline just falls completely flat.
Because translating history isn't just about swapping vocabulary from one language to another. It's really an act of cultural survival.
Definitely.
You're trying to capture the elusive energy of a living narrative and somehow make it resonate with someone sitting halfway across the world centuries later.
Which is no small task.
Yeah.
And welcome in, everyone. Today we are looking at a truly fascinating intersection of ancient folklore, spiritual legacy, and modern global publishing.
It's a great topic today.
It really is. The sources we have on the table are the foreword and the extensive background materials for a newly published book. It's titled Drukpa Kunley, Sacred Tales of a Mad Monk.
A very provocative title.
Yeah, it grabs you right away. And our mission for this deep dive is to explore the monumental task of translating these centuries-old oral and classical traditions for a modern audience.
Right, and crucially, we're going to look at why the identity of the storyteller isn't just some footnote.
No, it is utterly essential to the story itself. Okay, let's unpack this, because the core tension here is incredibly complex.
It really is.
How do you take the wildly unconventional life of a legendary historical figure and make it make sense globally without stripping away its cultural soul in the process?
Right, and to understand the stakes of that tension, we first need to look at the parameters of the sources we're actually analyzing today.
Because we're not just reading the stories themselves.
Exactly. We are not diving into the individual tales of the monk just yet. Instead, we're looking at the foundational framing of the anthology itself.
The meta text, basically.
Yeah, the foreword, the author's biography, the publisher's intent.
Yeah.
Because this is a work of creative nonfiction.
Right.
And as we explore this framing, I want you, listening to this, to consider how the mechanism of storytelling fundamentally shifts depending on whose hands are on the wheel.
Because the frame matters.
It does. The way a book is framed and validated often tells us just as much about the cultural significance of the work as the actual text inside.
That makes total sense. So let's start with the focal point of the book, Drukpa Kunley himself.
The Mad Monk.
Right. Our sources describe him as a revealed, mad yogi who left an indelible mark on Bhutanese culture through unconventional and profound deeds.
It's a fascinating description.
It is, because those two adjectives, unconventional and profound, they seem to be doing a lot of heavy lifting here.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, when we hear the word mad in a historical context, we usually think of someone who has, completely lost touch with reality.
Right, like they're just unstable.
Exactly. But the sources suggest his legacy is actually full of sharp wisdom and wit.
Yeah, the term mad in this specific spiritual context, it requires a bit of decoding for us.
Okay, lay it on me.
So it doesn't imply a lack of sanity at all. It actually points to a well-documented tradition in Himalayan Buddhism that is often referred to as crazy wisdom.
Crazy wisdom. I love that term.
It's great, right. And the underlying logic of crazy wisdom is that societal norms, polite manners, rigid religious rules.
The things we think make us good people.
Exactly. Those things can actually become obstacles to true enlightenment.
Because we just get caught up in the performance of it.
Yes. People get so caught up in behaving correctly that they completely lose sight of actual compassion or spiritual truth.
Oh, wow.
So a mad yogi deliberately shatters those expectations. They act outrageously, they use shocking humor, or they behave in ways that seem completely inappropriate for a holy person.
And they do this on purpose.
Entirely on purpose. It's specifically a mechanism to jolt people out of their complacency.
Like waking them up?
Right. They are disrupting the social script to force a moment of raw realization.
So the madness is essentially a calculated teaching tool?
Precisely.
He wasn't just being profound. He was profound precisely because he was willing to be totally unconventional.
He was the guy flipping the table to show you that the table wasn't even important in the first place.
I love that. And that legacy of disruptive wisdom has apparently survived for centuries in Bhutan through literature and folklore.
It has.
But here's the detail that makes this specific publication a massive literary milestone. This is the very first book in English on this subject written by a Bhutanese author.
Which is huge.
It is. Written by someone who actually grew up hearing and reading these stories.
What's fascinating here is how the foreword explicitly praises this author for bringing an authenticity and intimacy to the text.
Right.
Which really highlights a historical friction point in global publishing.
No, for sure.
Because for a very long time, when regional folklore or classical Eastern spiritual texts were translated for a Western audience, the work was overwhelmingly done by foreign scholars.
Anthropologists, linguists, that sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. You had outsiders arriving, documenting the culture, and then translating it back to the West.
The classic outsider looking in. I mean, they have the academic credentials, but they just don't have the lived experience.
They're missing the context.
Right.
Yeah.
Think about it like trying to understand the essence of your own hometown. Like, you could read a Wikipedia page written by some meticulous researcher living 1,000 miles away, right?
Sure.
And it'll give you the exact coordinates, the founding date, the demographic shifts, and it's perfectly accurate.
But it's dry.
Completely. But compare that to sitting on the porch with your grandfather while he tells you a story about the exact same neighborhood.
Oh, it's night and day.
Because he knows exactly where the floorboards creak. You know, he knows the underlying, like, petty rivalries between the families he's mentioning.
He knows the inside jokes.
Yes. He knows the exact rhythm of the local dialect, where to speed up, where to pause for the punchline. A Wikipedia page gives you the data, but your grandfather gives you the heartbeat.
That is exactly the power of the native voice.
Right.
An academic translation might achieve perfect linguistic symmetry,
Yeah.
but it often unintentionally sanitizes the text.
It irons out all the wrinkles.
Yeah, exactly. When an outsider translates a joke or a moment of crazy wisdom, they might over-explain it or flatten the humor just to make it fit a textbook format.
Right, to make it academic.
But when the teller is an insider, someone organically shaped by the culture, the text retains its original temperature.
Its original temperature, I like that.
And this forces us to ask critical questions about historical narrative. Like, who typically holds the pen when local folklore is elevated to the global stage?
It's usually not the locals.
Exactly. So having a native Bhutanese author step into this role fundamentally alters the mechanism of how this history is consumed.
Okay, so if an outsider can't capture that native heartbeat, who possibly has the skills to bridge a rigid ancient text in a highly fluid oral tradition?
It's a very specific skill set.
Right. You would need someone with an almost paradoxical toolkit. And that brings us to the architect of this anthology, the author Nidrup Zangpo.
Yes.
So he lives in Thimphu, the capital of Bhutan. But his background is what really stands out to me here.
It's incredibly diverse.
It really is. So in college, he studied English, Indian, and Greek literature. Then he spent 2 decades working in Bhutan's civil service and in emerging media, where he basically just taught himself the craft of journalism and research.
Right.
And today, he spends his time studying and meditating on Buddhist literature and classical Tibetan.
It is just a remarkable convergence of disciplines.
It's wild.
He is holding the structural knowledge of Western classical literature in one hand, the investigative tools of a modern journalist in the other, and grounding both of those in a deep meditative practice of his own cultural heritage.
I look at that resume, and honestly, it's impressive. But I genuinely have to wonder how this actually works in practice.
What do you mean?
Well, we are talking about translating 33 stories that blend classical Tibetan biographical narratives with oral folklore, stuff that's been passed down around fires for generations.
Right. Very different formats.
Exactly. Oral storytelling is incredibly fluid. It relies on the storyteller improvising, reading the room, leaning into the performance.
Absolutely.
But classical Tibetan, on the other hand, is a highly formalized, rigid written language.
Very structured.
So doesn't studying classical Greek epics and formalized Tibetan texts actually kind of work against him here?
That's a really good question.
Like, if his training is in these highly structured, rigid forms of literature, how does he take a fluid, winking, oral campfire story and just freeze it onto a printed page in English without totally sterilizing the magic?
That tension you were pointing out is exactly why translation is often considered an impossible art.
Because you're translating the untranslatable.
Yeah, you are basically trying to transcribe a free-flowing jazz solo using classical sheet music.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
The format inherently fights the content. But this is where Zhangpo's specific methodology, what the sources actually describe as creative nonfiction retelling, this becomes the crucial mechanism.
Okay, creative nonfiction retelling.
Right, because a literal word-for-word translation of an oral tale almost always fails on the page.
Because it strips away the performance context, right?
Yeah, exactly. Without the hand gestures and the tone of voice, it just looks messy. So Zhangpo isn't just translating words, he is translating structure and intent.
But how does studying, like, Greek literature help him do that with Bhutanese folklore?
Oh, because it gives him a masterclass in global narrative archetypes.
Okay, I see.
Think about Greek myths, right? They have trickster figures, they have epic journeys, they have structural arcs that Western readers have just internalized for centuries.
We just instinctively know how those stories are supposed to feel.
Exactly. So by understanding how Greek or English literature builds a story that captivates a reader, Zhangpo can map the fluid Bhutanese oral tales onto a narrative framework that an English-speaking audience intuitively understands.
Oh, wow. So he isn't changing the Bhutanese soul of the story.
Not at all.
He is just using Western literary architecture to deliver it.
Yes.
He's basically building a bridge out of materials the reader already recognizes so they can walk across and access the Bhutanese content.
That's exactly what he's doing.
And I imagine his journalism background is what keeps that creative retelling, actually anchored to reality.
Precisely. Because it's an oral tradition, there are likely dozens of variations of the exact same Drukpa Kunley story just floating around different villages.
Oh, sure. Like playing telephone for 500 years.
Right. But a journalist knows how to cross-reference.
Ah.
He can interview different storytellers, compare their oral versions against the rigid classical Tibetan texts, and then synthesize a version that is historically sound but narratively compelling.
That makes so much sense.
And finally, his ongoing meditation practice ensures he doesn't lose the profound aspect of the mad yogi.
Because he actually practices it.
Right. He understands the esoteric Buddhist mechanics behind why the yogi is acting outrageously.
Which prevents the stories from just being reduced to mere slapstick comedy.
Exactly. It's not just a guy acting crazy for laughs. There's deep meaning there.
It's just an incredible balancing act. I mean, he uses the journalism to verify the facts, the classical literary training to build the narrative structure, and the spiritual practice to protect the deeper meaning.
It really is a perfectly engineered translation.
It is. But as we know, even the best translation needs a platform.
True.
It needs to be validated and it needs to be distributed. And here's where it gets really interesting, because the way this book is framed by its endorsements basically transcends anything we typically see in the publishing world.
Oh, for sure.
Let's look at who actually wrote the foreword for this anthology.
Because the author of the foreword fundamentally alters the gravity of this entire project.
Completely. So the foreword was written by Gyalsey, Trulku, Jigme, Tenzin Wangpo.
Yes.
And the sources point out that he is the 8th reincarnation of the great-grandson of Drukpa Kunley.
Which is just staggering.
It's wild. When we think about major endorsements in Western literature, we think of a glowing blurb from a historian or maybe like a famous contemporary author praising the prose on the dust jacket.
Right. Standard marketing stuff.
But here, we are talking about a book documenting a historical figure from centuries ago, and the validation comes from the recognized 8th reincarnation of his own family line.
It's completely unprecedented for a mainstream release.
How does a modern publisher even contextualize that kind of endorsement? It completely bridges the gap between myth and living history.
It does. And to understand the weight of that endorsement, we really have to look at the mechanism of spiritual lineage in Himalayan culture.
Okay, tell me more about that.
So in the West, we view history strictly chronologically, right?
Yeah.
A great-grandson is a descendant. They're separated by time and biology. But in the context of reincarnate lamas, who are known as tulkus, the reincarnation is viewed as the unbroken continuous presence of that specific spiritual consciousness.
So it's not just some guy who happens to be related centuries later.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It is not just a biological descendant offering a nice quote. It is viewed culturally as the ongoing spiritual authority of that lineage directly validated the text. So when he writes the foreword, he is providing a seal of authenticity that carries both literal historical weight and profound spiritual gravity.
It tells you this is the real deal.
Right. It signals to the reader that this creative retelling hasn't strayed from the sacred truth of the teachings.
It is the ultimate insider stamp of approval.
It really is.
But this highly specific, culturally intimate endorsement is paired with something completely different on the distribution side.
Right, because the publisher bringing this to the world is HarperCollins.
A massive mainstream international publishing house.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the involvement of HarperCollins is the vital second half of the equation here.
How so?
Well, you have the deepest possible local spiritual validation on one side, and then you have the vast commercial distribution network of a major international publishing house on the other.
Oh, I see. It moves the book completely out of the realm of, like, niche academic studies and places it squarely in the global mainstream.
Exactly. And that is the stated intent behind the publication. The foreword explicitly notes that the goal is to bring Drukpa Kunley's legacy to a wider readership.
So it's not just a preservation project.
No, this isn't just an archival project to ensure the stories don't disappear in Bhutan. It is a deliberate effort to elevate Himalayan culture to the global literary stage.
That's incredibly powerful.
It is. By putting the weight of a major publisher behind a native voice, they are actively broadening the worldwide understanding of Himalayan spirituality.
They're opening the doors for everyone.
Yes. They are ensuring that the disruptive, crazy wisdom of this mad yogi has a chance to challenge and engage the contemporary modern world.
Instead of just being, a footnote in a theology textbook that 3 people read.
Exactly.
It is about giving the rest of the world access to a profound way of thinking that they honestly might never have encountered otherwise.
It's democratizing the wisdom.
I love that. So what does this all mean? Like, why does the framing of this one anthology matter to you, listening to this deep dive right now?
Well, I think it's...
Ultimately, this is a masterclass in how human heritage actually survives.
Yes.
It proves that ancient wisdom, even the wildest, most unconventional wisdom from figures who deliberately broke all the rules, can remain deeply relevant and universally accessible.
But it doesn't happen automatically.
No, it requires an incredible alchemy. It demands someone who deeply loves the source material, who understands the cultural heartbeat from the inside out.
And who possesses the precise tools to translate that heartbeat into a rhythm the rest of the world can hear.
Exactly.
The mechanism of preserving history is an active process. It's not a passive one. It requires translation and adaptation and deep care.
Absolutely.
And that is a concept you can apply far beyond the legends of a 15th century yogi.
Right, it applies everywhere.
Think about the oral traditions that exist within your own sphere.
Yeah, everybody has them.
The unwritten tales that circulate in your own family. The legends of your local community. The strange, maybe unconventional wisdom passed down by your own grandparents around the dinner table.
The local lore that only the insiders truly understand.
Exactly. Those stories contain their own forms of crazy wisdom and cultural DNA.
For sure.
And if a native voice from within your own family or community doesn't step up to document those narratives, if someone doesn't apply the same meticulous care and contemporary translation that Nidrup Zangpo applied to Drukpa Kunley, then those stories evaporate.
It's gone.
Right. When the people who hold the memories are gone, the context dies with them.
Which is pretty heartbreaking when you think about it.
It is, which leaves you with an essential question to ponder.
What's that?
What wisdom, what wit, or what completely mad brilliance might be permanently lost to time in your own world if no one takes on the monumental task of writing it down?